The bonus that changed the silence. I never thought a number could change everything. Not a shout. Not a fight. Not even a confrontation. Just a number. $450,000. For years, my family believed in silence. Not the peaceful kind, the careful kind. The kind that avoids questions. The kind that smooths over uncomfortable truths. The kind that protects someone, quietly. Growing up, I learned early that success was allowed. But only if it didn't disturb the balance. Work hard. Be grateful. Don't ask too many questions. That was the unspoken rule. My parents were proud people. Private people. They believed family matters stayed inside the family. And some things, no matter how heavy, were better left unsaid. I respected that. For a long time. I built my career quietly. No shortcuts. No favors. I stayed late when others left early. I took responsibility when others avoided it. And slowly, my work started speaking for itself. The bonus came unexpectedly. Not announced at a dinner table. Not celebrated with applause. Just an email. Simple subject line. Formal tone. But the number inside it changed how people looked at me. Not because of the money. Because of what the money represented. It represented independence. Proof. A shift in power. I didn't share the amount right away. I didn't think it mattered. But families notice change before they hear explanations. Suddenly, conversations paused when I entered rooms. Questions sounded casual, but weren't. Work going well? They value you there? The silence that once felt protective now felt alert. That's when I realized something important. My family wasn't afraid of success. They were afraid of what success might uncover. Because for years, someone else had been quietly shielded. Decisions were made around them. Expectations adjusted. Mistakes softened. And everyone else learned to adapt. Including me. The bonus didn't expose anyone directly. It didn't accuse. It didn't confront. It simply changed my position. And when your position changes, the old rules don't work the same way anymore. I saw it in my parents' eyes. Pride, mixed with concern. Because silence works best. When everyone stays where they're expected to be. And I had just stepped out of that place. I didn't know it yet. But that bonus wasn't just money. It was leverage. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't demand answers. But makes avoiding them impossible. And from that moment on, the silence we had protected for years began to feel fragile. Like glass under pressure. Money doesn't just buy comfort. Sometimes, it buys clarity. After the bonus, things didn't explode. They tightened. Family conversations became careful again. But this time, the caution wasn't about protecting peace. It was about protecting control. I noticed how quickly my success became managed. Not celebrated. Not questioned directly. Managed. Advice came that I hadn't asked for. Warnings wrapped in concern. Stay humble. Don't let this change you. Big money brings big problems. I smiled. I nodded. But inside, something felt off. Because no one said those things when others failed. No one warned them about consequences. No one reminded them to stay grounded. Silence, I realized, had rules. And money had just changed who those rules applied to. I started seeing the pattern more clearly. For years, one person in our family had been quietly protected. Not praised, protected. When they struggled, excuses appeared. When they fell short, expectations lowered. When questions came too close, silence stepped in. But now, my success made that protection visible. Because suddenly, fairness mattered. Not emotionally. Financially. People asked questions they never asked before. Who paid for what? Who helped whom? Who carried responsibility, and who didn't? The bonus didn't expose the truth. It pressured it. I could feel the discomfort in the room whenever money came up. The topic would change. Someone would joke. Someone would leave. Because silence is easiest. When no one has leverage. And now, I did. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't setting traps. I was just living honestly. Paying my share. Setting boundaries. Saying no when something wasn't fair. That alone felt disruptive. Not because it was wrong. But because it was new. My parents tried to keep things normal. They still spoke carefully. Still avoided certain topics. But the silence didn't feel protective anymore. It felt defensive. And that's when I understood something painful. They weren't protecting a person anymore. They were protecting a past decision. A choice they had made years ago. To stay quiet, to smooth things over, to handle it privately. My bonus didn't challenge their authority. It challenged their story. Because once money enters the picture, silence stops being neutral. It starts choosing sides. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't need to. All I had to do was stay consistent. And consistency is dangerous to old systems. Because systems built on silence depend on people staying small. And I wasn't small anymore. By the end of that month, I could feel it. Something had shifted. Not outwardly, but structurally. The family balance we had protected for years was starting to bend. And when balance bends for too long, it either adjusts or it breaks. There's a moment in every story when confusion ends. Not because someone explains the truth, but because the truth explains itself. For me, that moment came quietly. No argument. No raised voices. Just a conversation that stopped too suddenly. We were talking about something simple. Future plans. Responsibilities. Nothing serious. Then I asked one question. Not about money. Not about the bonus. Just a question about fairness. The room changed. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Someone cleared their throat. Someone looked away. Someone said, "Let's not get into that." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about keeping peace. This was about keeping a version of reality intact. For the first time, I saw the silence clearly. It wasn't protecting feelings. It was protecting decisions. Decisions made long ago. When it was easier to stay quiet than to be honest. I replayed memories in my head. Times when responsibility should have been shared, but wasn't. Times when consequences should have followed, but didn't. Times when I was told to be patient, understanding, flexible. At the time, I thought it was maturity. Now I saw it differently. It was adaptation. I had adapted to imbalance so well that it felt normal. And the bonus didn't create this situation. It revealed it. Because money has a way of removing illusions. Not by accusing anyone, but by forcing clarity. I noticed how quickly the narrative shifted around me. I was no longer just a family member. I was a variable. Someone whose independence couldn't be managed as easily. And that made people uncomfortable. I didn't feel angry. I felt awake. Because once you see a pattern, you can't unsee it. Silence stopped sounding like love. It started sounding like fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of accountability. Fear of admitting that staying quiet had costs. I realized something else too. The person who had been protected for years wasn't the real problem. The system was. A system built on good intentions and sustained by silence. And I had been part of it. Not by lying, but by not questioning. That realization didn't break my heart. It strengthened it. Because if silence was a choice, so was honesty. And honesty didn't have to be loud. It just had to be consistent. I made a decision that day. Not to expose anyone. Not to confront anyone. But to stop adjusting my life. To make silence comfortable. From that moment on, I would let reality stand on its own. No editing. No smoothing. Just truth, quietly lived. And that decision, more than the bonus itself, is what truly changed everything. I didn't sit down and plan revenge. There was no list. No secret meeting with myself. No dramatic moment where I said, now it's my turn. Because what I was about to do didn't feel like revenge at all. It felt like responsibility. Once I stopped adjusting my life to protect the silence, things started becoming very clear. I looked at my finances carefully. Not emotionally, practically. Where my money went. What I supported. What I quietly covered. And that's when I realized something uncomfortable. For years, I had been participating in the protection. Without ever being asked. Helping here. Covering there. Not questioning timelines. Not asking for clarity. Not because I was forced to. But because silence had trained me to. So my plan was simple. I stopped filling the gaps. I paid what was fair, not more. I committed to what was mine, not everyone else's. I documented things that had always been handled informally. Not to accuse. Not to expose. Just to be clear. That clarity felt threatening to people who were used to flexibility. Suddenly, decisions needed explanations. Agreements needed structure. Promises needed timelines. And I stayed calm through all of it. That was the hardest part. Because when you stay calm, people can't paint you as emotional. They can't dismiss you as dramatic. They have to deal with the facts. I noticed how often someone tried to pull me back into the old role. The fixer. The understanding one. The quiet supporter. And every time, I politely stepped aside. Not angrily. Not loudly. Just, firmly. That's when the pressure started shifting. Not onto me. But onto the system that had relied on me staying flexible. The bonus gave me options. But my choices gave me leverage. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't mention the past. I simply stopped making silence convenient. And here's the thing about soft revenge. It doesn't humiliate. It doesn't punish. It removes comfort. It forces people to face reality. Without you having to say a word. Slowly, conversations changed. People asked different questions. They paused before assuming. They stopped expecting me to carry weight that wasn't mine. The person who had been protected for years felt it too. Not as an attack, but as a shift. Suddenly, there was no buffer. No one stepping in early. No one smoothing outcomes. Just reality. And reality doesn't need revenge. It does the work on its own. I realized then that the most effective plan isn't the one that shocks everyone. It's the one that looks so reasonable. No one can argue against it. And once that plan is in motion, the old silence has nowhere to hide. The system didn't collapse overnight. It hesitated first. Like something unsure of its footing. At first, people tried to continue as usual. Old habits. Old expectations. But something was missing. Me. Not my presence. My participation. The small things stopped happening. No quiet fixes. No last-minute help. No unspoken adjustments. And without those, the cracks started showing. Decisions that once felt easy now needed explanation. Requests that were once assumed now had to be asked. And when they were asked, they didn't always get a yes. That alone changed everything. I could feel the discomfort growing. Not anger. Not blame. Uncertainty. Because when a system depends on silence, clarity feels like pressure. My parents noticed first. Not in words. In behavior. They paused more. They asked before deciding. They looked at situations from angles they had avoided before. I could see the weight settling in. They were realizing how much effort silence had required. How many small sacrifices had been spread quietly over years. And how uneven that distribution had been. The person who had always been protected started feeling exposed. Not publicly, but structurally. There was no shield anymore. Not because I removed it aggressively, but because I stopped holding it up. Responsibility stayed where it landed. And that was new. At first, there was confusion. Why is this suddenly different? Why can't things just work the old way? No one said it directly. But it hung in the air. I stayed steady. No explanations. No speeches. Just consistency. And consistency is hard to fight. Because it doesn't argue. It doesn't react. It simply refuses to bend. Slowly, the system adjusted. Not because it wanted to, but because it had to. Conversations became more honest. Not kind, honest. Some assumptions died quietly. Some expectations disappeared. And something unexpected happened. The tension eased. Not because everyone was happy, but because everything was finally clear. Clarity replaces chaos. Silence hides it. I realized then that the system had never been strong. It had been dependent. Dependent on one person staying flexible. Staying quiet. Staying smaller than their potential. Once that stopped, the cracks were unavoidable. And in those cracks, the truth finally had room to breathe. When everything finally slowed down, I realized something important. Nothing had exploded. No one was publicly embarrassed. No one was pushed out. No names were called. And yet, nothing was the same. The silence that once felt necessary now felt unnecessary. We didn't talk about the past directly. We didn't rewrite history. But we stopped pretending it hadn't shaped us. My parents changed in small, honest ways. They asked more questions. They paused before protecting. They allowed responsibility to exist. Without rushing to soften it. Not because they were forced to, but because clarity had made the cost visible. They saw how much silence had required. Not just from me, but from everyone. The person who had been quietly protected found their footing differently now. Not supported by excuses. Not hidden by adjustments. Just, real. There were moments of discomfort. Moments when the old system tried to return. But it couldn't. Because once clarity exists, silence loses its authority. And I felt lighter. Not because I had won something, but because I had stopped carrying what was never mine. The bonus didn't give me power over anyone. It gave me freedom. Freedom to say no without guilt. Freedom to be fair without apology. Freedom to live honestly, without managing someone else's comfort. That's the truth about soft revenge. It isn't about hurting others. It's about stopping harm to yourself. It's about choosing alignment over approval. I didn't destroy anything. I removed myself from a system that depended on my silence. And when that system cracked, something better replaced it. Balance. Honesty. Boundaries. If there's one lesson I carry forward, it's this. Silence can protect in the moment, but it always sends the bill later. And when that bill comes due, the bravest thing you can do is stop paying it.